welcome to another training in your journey to reach the top of your leadership, competition, and your success. Let's get into it. This is what you're going to get from this training. Understand your perception of competition. You will also understand where your understanding of competition comes from. What it is that you think about it, where do you get that idea from? We're gonna explore that, okay? And then you're gonna learn how you can leverage the concept of competition for your success and leadership development. As you know, we are all about developing your leadership. And this concept is a concept that I have never heard anybody cover in the way that we're gonna cover it. Let me ask you a question. How do you react to competition? What is it that you do when you find yourself in a scenario where you may be in competition with some other people around you? Do you run from it? Do you embrace it? Does it feel like a threat to you? Do you welcome it? Do you avoid it? What is your reaction to it? How do you feel if it's competition in the professional area in your life? Maybe you're at work and you're going to be put into a group, and now you have to plan a project together with other people. How does it affect your performance? Does it hinder your performance? Does it ignite your performance? Do you want to avoid that kind of scenario? Do you actually take steps to avoid being in such a situation? What about your personal life? How do you react to competition? This is very important to understand if you are to reach your leadership success. What is the perception that you hold about competing? Do you think that competing is a win-lose only situation? Do you feel that if you win, then nobody else around you can win? You got to win and everybody has to be a loser around you? Do you feel that if you allow others to win, then does that mean that you are a loser? And does that really affect you? How does this notion affect your belief about who you are and what you can achieve? If you look at competition in an adversarial manner, a threatening situation, and you don't win, then what happens to you? What does it say about you if you look at it from that perspective? How does competing and not winning in the traditional way of thinking or being number one, right? How does not being number one affect your level of belief about you and your confidence? How does all that interact in your mind? How does it affect you, your leadership, and your ability to reach your goals and your success? This is why this topic of competition is key to understand. The goals that you have reached today are in some way, shape, or form a deviation or a form of the way that you have competed all along. The way that you have interacted with competition along the way dictates or hinders the success that you have had. But I think that what's important is for you to understand competition, be able to be clear how you see it, how you perceive it, how it affects you, and then have a paradigm shift, have a new mindset about it so that you can definitely leverage it to succeed. And we are going to give you as a gift that understanding. Because remember, leadership development is all about you becoming more self-aware, how you see yourself, how you see the world, how you interact with these concepts, words, and emotions, and then be able to leverage them to make them more congruent with your goals and desires in your leadership. Back in 1859, there was a book published by Charles Darwin. Many of you know him as the father of evolution, right? The Origins of Species. In this book, Charles Darwin said that living organisms are embroiled in a struggle for survival. The typical scene of, a lion killing a deer, an eagle killing a little squirrel, eating it. It was in this book where the notion was started to be planted in our minds and in society that when it comes to living in an environment, organisms have to fight each other to survive and to thrive, and that there are always winners and there are always losers. This struggle is not only applicable to animals, though. The idea started taking a leap, and it also got applied to humans and our behaviors. Now think about this. First, we were talking about an eagle that has to eat a squirrel. But now all of a sudden, that applies to humans too? That's what occurred. That concept of evolution, survival of the fittest, only the strong survive, was born from this book, The Origins of Species, with Charles Darwin. And then it got exported or imported into human societies and the way that we interact with each other. When I asked you, where do you get the concept of competition being such a threat or being such a cutthroat type of situation? We have been conditioned throughout our lives to see competition in this way. Now, I understand that obviously, if you're going to be racing people, there is obviously somebody who wins and somebody who's last, and you lose in that sense of the word. It is a race. But how does that idea of a simple race get translated into the everyday living in our society? See, that's a complete different outcome. But that has occurred. That's what has been happening basically to all of us, because that concept came into our society and it started dictating how we see each other and our interactions. Because of this idea of survival of the fittest, only the strong survive, the scientists who believed this approach by Darwin and theory, they took off and they came out with this other idea of genetic determinism. You are predetermined to be, and there is nothing you can do about it. We were told for many years that depending on the genes that you had, you were either prone to succeed or prone to being a loser, prone to do this or prone to doing that. We developed the belief that only through whatever you have been born with, that was the only reason why you could expect certain things in life. That was genetic determinism. It was wrong. The whole idea of genetic determinism was wrong. But for many, many years, you grew up going to school, being educated, hearing news and different discussions on this topic, coming from that perspective of genetic determinism. So your perception of competition being cutthroat is not just a coincidence. It has been a conditioning that has occurred through all our years while we went to school to get educated. So it hasn't been just a coincidence. The process of natural selection invaded every area of human interaction. Charles Darwin said that a thriving species passes on their best qualities through these genes. And because of that, some species thrive while others have to die. But that concept was applied to economy, politics, the idea of you succeeding or not succeeding, the idea of you becoming wealthy or not being wealthy, the idea of you being poor, sexism, racism, etc. Imagine what the damage has been using this dogma, this theory, this idea as the platform upon which you can justify injustices, justify misalignment with interactions within individuals. See, when we hide behind this idea of genetic determinism, it is easy to say, well, you haven't made it because you have the gene that makes you a loser. I have the gene that makes me win, so I am a winner and success. Same thing for sexism, justifying that women cannot do this or cannot do that because they're just women. That is ridiculous, but this is what the damage has been from this idea that seems to just have been just a theory in biology, right? No big deal. The outcome, the damage has been huge, and it continues to be very damaging in our society today. You see, competition as an adversarial experience, and that's why you even fear it. The written history is once again wrong, though, and you have been misled. You have been misled into believing this. Back in 1809, there was a French biologist by the name of Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. He also wrote a book about evolution. But if you notice, Charles Darwin wrote his book in 1859. This French biologist, Lamarck, wrote it in 1809. So that means that Jean-Baptiste Lamarck was 50 years earlier than Darwin. That's number one. So the idea that Darwin was the father of this theory of evolution is wrong already, because this guy was the first one that wrote about it. But this is the other big news that you may not know. In his book, Jean-Baptiste Lamarck says that evolution and the thriving of a species has to do more with cooperation rather than competition, or cooperation more than just competition. He felt that evolution is a product of cooperative interaction between organisms and the environment. Complete opposite of what Darwin has said. But you know what? When this French biologist came up with this theory in 1809, the most powerful government without an army felt threatened by him. You know what the government was? The church. The church was so against the idea of us coming from an evolutionary process that they did whatever they could to basically send Lamarck to the dungeons in science. And other scientists who were in alignment as creationists also helped in the process, so that Lamarck's theory could not see the light of day. He became an outcast in the sciences, basically. And that's why you haven't heard from him. And what I like to say about it is this: look, how do we know if you believe in God or not? How do you know the process that God used for us to be created? I know that the Bible does say he created man, he created woman, right? But how do we know that he didn't create it through this process of changing organisms so that he can eventually arrive at this form that we have today? None of us know that. It could be. Why can't it be that that's the process that he did use, or that she did use to create us, right? So I'm saying that it doesn't necessarily have to be in conflict with the idea of being created by a higher being. It could work. However, that's another different conversation. But the idea of survival of the fittest, only the strong survive, was not the foundational idea that the original father of evolution had, which in this case is Lamarck. That's why instead of hearing that cooperation is the way to thrive with other organisms while we may compete, instead of hearing that, what we were educated with was survival of the fittest, only the strong survive. So the typical image of the lion going after the deer and eating it, the eagle going after the squirrel and eating it, that is what you have in your mind as competition. And who would like to be the deer? Who would like to be the squirrel? Not me. I know you don't either. And that's why subconsciously, without saying a word, you shine away from even being in a scenario where you have to compete. And it hurts your confidence. That's the truth. It hurts your confidence. It hurts your belief about you, what you can achieve. And you have probably left many doors closed because you can't even engage in the idea of competing. The truth is that even the bacteria in our body cooperate for us to thrive and be healthy. I know that we always think, oh my God, bacteria, let me wash my hands. Bacteria is a key element for you to be a healthy organism. You know that? There's a bunch of it in your digestive system. The natural flora that we call is a bunch of bacteria down there that needs to be there for you to thrive and be alive. And that bacteria competes, but cooperates to stay there in your digestive system so that you can stay healthy and be alive. And this is just a small example how organisms have to cooperate with each other because each one of us has a role in the ecosystem that we live in. Now, it is true that one animal may eat another, but you know what? That is part of the balance that occurs. because you cannot have unlimited amount of organisms in an environment, right? Or overpopulation would eventually crash that system. So eating some animals, eating others here and there is part of that balance. Even that in itself is a cooperation, though, between organisms so that the ecosystem can stay balanced and be able to feed all the organisms within it. But that's not at all how we see competition, right? It has been the opposite. Competition is just one of the many avenues that exist for you and I to interact with each other. You gotta start looking at it that way. Change your perspective of how you see competition. Your leadership, your success, and competition all go hand in hand. If you do not learn how to welcome competition in your mind and in your life, how do you find out how good you can be? Now, I know that you can go and try to do your best by yourself. Hey, and that works. We always get up and try to do our best, but you never find out what you're capable of until you have somebody next to you pushing as hard as you are pushing. How do you find out how fast you can run if you don't run in a race with other people running next to you? You will never find out how fast you can run unless you compete running against somebody else. And if you do lose in that race, then if you are really somebody who wants to be better, then you're going to figure it out. What do I have to do better next time so that I'm faster, so that I can be number one? And that is the process of self-discovery. That's the process of discipline. That is the reflection of the commitment that you may have behind a goal. But competition is the catalyst that allows you to get there, to achieve those things. Without competition, you might just run down the road and, hey, I ran, great, I'm done. No fire to get better because you didn't actually experience how it was to be behind somebody else. Competition is the only way to find that out. Competition is here to help you find out what you are capable of. I want you to remember that. Competition is an avenue for you to discover what you are made of. Use your curiosity to wonder how fast, how far, how good you can be. Remember when you were a small child and there was nothing that you wouldn't try because you were curious to find out? That's the same curiosity I want you to harness again. Be curious. Can I do this? If I run with these people here, can I be number one or can I be 2, 3, 4? Where will I fall? And then once you experience that, question yourself, why did I fall in that place? What could I do better next time? And then try again. If you're in a group that you're being assigned to work with at work or in your business, hey, let's see. What is the goal? Get 20 of these things done. All right, can I do 30? Am I capable? If I were going to do 30 instead of 20, how would I go about it? That's the curiosity. That's the road of success. And that's the road to leadership development. But none of that occurs unless you have the right perception about competition and know how to leverage it. Put aside your ego. Stop worrying about what others would think or say. The ego is one of the main reasons why you don't engage in competition. You don't want other people to see you, quote unquote, be last or lose. I remember when I was running track when I was a young man in high school, and I was last, literally last. I did not like the feeling of being last and everybody watching on the bleachers. What that did for me, though, it fueled me to figure out how to be a better runner. And after I talked to my coach several times, he finally believed that I really had the fire to be number one and gave me a whole separate workout that I had to do in order to become a better runner. So he said, before class at 7 a.m., because I was taking an extra class because I didn't know English, so I had to take an extra class. While all the children began at 8 a.m., I began at 7 a.m. He said, before class, you need to run 3 miles on the track every morning. That meant that I had to be at school around 6:15 a.m. to be able to run my 3 miles, take a shower, and be in class by 7 a.m. Then he said, at lunchtime, I want you in the weight room doing deadlifts, squats, and then in the evening after class, do your workout with the team. And then on Saturdays, I want you to find a hill about 80 meters to 100 meters long, at least at a 30% incline, and run it 10 sprints. Go up, walk back, go up, walk back. That was the workout. I started doing that, and about 3 months later, I started being number one in the 800 every time I ran, and I actually became the number one runner at an invitational in Palm Springs. That's what competition does. If you embrace it and put aside your ego, don't worry about what people will say or think or do. It's all about you finding out what you are made of, but it will push you to do things that you could never have done otherwise. So instead, take a leadership thinking about competition. Do your best so you may help others do their best also. The big deal about competition is that if you allow it to be the catalyst for you to find the next level of performance in your professional career, in your personal life, in your success, in your leadership, if you embrace it in such a perspective as a leader, what you can do is this: become that person that everybody sees is doing something bigger, something faster. And then you can help them believe and understand how they can do it too. That's the big deal about it. I used to look at competition as a win all or lose all type of thing. I'm going to destroy you because I have to survive. Survival of the fittest, only the strong survive. But I shifted that thinking through the process that I share with you, and I started seeing competition as part of my leadership. Because as a leader, you must lead by example. You cannot say be a winner and be last. You cannot say be successful and be in the back. You got to lead by example. Competition will help you figure out how to do just that. But the gift that you gotta be focused on as a leader is to help those around you believe they can do it too. That's why competition is important in your success and in your leadership. Now, when I compete, I don't go into a competition thinking, all right, let me just destroy everybody and let me show them who I am. No, I go in, I do look at the competition and I say, all right, bring it. Let's see what you can do. I'm excited to find out what I can do too. And I will give it the very best to be number one. But once I win, if I do win, my thing is this: hey, let me share with all of you now how I did it. Let me share with you my thinking, my mindset, so that you can do it too. And that is the leadership approach I encourage you to take with competition. Use it as the vehicle for you to increase your leadership and increase the collective belief of those around you. If you do it, then others will believe they can do it too, because you can be sharing with them the ways that you did it. You see, when I started winning those track races I was sharing with you, a lot of my friends would say, man, what have you been doing? Then I told them, hey, in the morning I do this at lunch, and I do this on the weekends, and the track, and I do the workout with the track team, and this and that. Some of them got excited. Oh yeah, you know what? I'm gonna do it too. 2 weeks later, they wouldn't start showing up in the mornings. And that's the difference. Are you committed to becoming the best that you can be, or you just talk? That's the bottom line. Are you gonna follow through with what you say, or you just talk? Do you claim to be a leader, but you frankly are not because you don't put the effort? You're not willing to put in the work? If that's the case, then just admit it and call it a day, and it's okay. Not everybody can lead. That's the truth. But if you are serious about it, just know that you can commit to it and engage in the discipline required, and you can do it. That's the beauty of it. Roger Bannister was the first man to break the 4-minute mile in the world. For 68 years, people were trying to break that record. And people were saying in the track world, you know what? Nobody can run faster than 4 minutes. It's not humanly possible. But then Roger Bannister did it in 1954. But this is what's amazing. After Roger Bannister did it, a record, something that people were trying to do for 68 years. Guess what? A month later, somebody else did it too. A month later. Isn't that amazing? Then a year later, 3 other runners did it in the same race. This is what I mean by take the leadership approach to competition. Because Roger Bannister did it. Something that had become a psychological barrier for many that have tried for 68 years, all of a sudden disappeared. and people started to do it. Now there's hundreds, thousands of men and women who run, real fast and break these records all the time in the Olympics now. That's why I say, take the leadership approach, help increase the collective belief through competition. That's the only catalyst that can help you get there. Competition is not here to defeat you. It's here to build you. It's here to build your leadership. Don't avoid it. Don't run from it. Embrace it. Use it to discover what you're made of. Your leadership perception is key when it comes to competition. You can be the best leader that you can be in your mind, but competition will have to be part of that thinking, in that mindset. Welcoming it in your life and leveraging it will be key for you to reach the next level in your leadership. Your success will be complemented by you welcoming every chance you have to compete. You got to compete. Compete against yourself. Compete against the routine. Compete against your limiting beliefs, the naysayers. Compete against your past limitations. Compete against your ego. Truthfully, you gotta compete with you and everything that you think and everything that you hear and the limiting beliefs and the naysayers and that negative voice. That's where the competition has to occur. But the truth is that you're gonna deal with competition externally the same way that you deal with it internally. That's why I say to you, welcome it into your life. When you hear that voice saying, oh, I don't know if we should do this, what if? You got to compete against that voice. Compete against it and win. Because once you win against that voice, guess what? You're going to start winning out here in the world too. The successes you have out here externally are a product, a byproduct, a reflection of the internal processes. And competition, my brother and sister, is no different. Remember this formula. Competition plus curiosity equals breakthrough performance. Every time and every chance you have to compete, add curiosity to that scenario. Aren't you curious? How fast can you do it? What can you achieve? Aren't you curious to find out what you're truly made of? So competition plus curiosity will give you that incentive to go through with the experience itself and leverage it as a leader, knowing that it is your job to continue to instill belief and increase the collective belief of those around you. And that is why you will have breakthrough performance. I hope that this message landed with you. Think about these concepts. Competition is here to build you, not to defeat you. See you at the top, where the champions belong.